Orleans Black Chamber and New Orleans Complete Streets Coalition. Thank you both so much for inviting me to welcome you to the Health and Wealth webinar.
We believe that your health, it's a personal, it is a professional, and it is a business matter.
Really happy here today to share with you guys concerning the Main Street Recovery Grant Program.
I'm excited to have with us this afternoon or evening our Executive Director, Ms. Laverne Toombs, who's out in the wing managing this initiative. But we are here because we got a second chance, and many of our small businesses did not get an opportunity to participate in the PPP program in the first round. And now we have a second chance, and we are so excited to be in partnership with the Hope Credit Union Enterprise Corporation. As a member of the Black Chamber, you have 10 benefits to becoming a member: promoting and collaboration, membership, member-to-member networking, procurement opportunities, referral to professional potential customers, professional development training, and technical assistance, policy in federal, state, and local government, collaborative programming, visibility and recognition. We published a weekly newsletter, and we love to do member spotlight. So we encourage those of you who are not members who are joining us this evening to go to our website and join today, because membership has its privileges. At this time, I'd like to introduce to you Ms. Kathy Saloy, Senior Vice President of Community and Economic Development, Hope Enterprise Corporation, and Mr. Clyde Burke, Policy Analyst of Hope Policy Institute. We're so happy to have you guys with us this evening. We know you're going to share some information with us. Everybody's been basically waiting with bated breath, wondering if there would be another opportunity and wanting to know now, how do we do this? So I'd like to turn it over at this time to Ms. Kathy Saloy, who will start us off this evening.
Hi, good afternoon, and thank you to the Black Chamber for putting this great opportunity on. As Ms. Richard indicated, I am with Hope Enterprise Corporation, Hope Credit Union, and we also have a Policy Institute. And we are happy to be an SBA lender and for the second time participate in being an administrator and available for Paycheck Protection loans. And so we're happy to discuss that process with you today and attempt to answer all of the questions. But before we get into the mechanics and all about the process, we'd like to talk a little bit about policy. So I am excited to have with me my colleague, Clyde Burke, that's gonna start us off.
All right, thank you so much, Kathy, for the introduction. So as she mentioned, before we get started with the mechanics and the myriad of details that are associated with the Payment Protection Program, I think it's best we start with an overview of what has been allocated and what has been set aside. So the Payment Protection Program, or PPP for short, is a critical opportunity for small businesses to receive capital to stay afloat during the pandemic. The Payment Protection Program offers forgivable loans with 1% interest rates to cover payroll and other eligible expenses to small businesses impacted by COVID-19. Recently, Congress has allocated an additional $284 billion to the program with some key developments. These developments are designed to address some of the shortcomings of the previous rounds of PPP and to increase the ease of access for small businesses, minority-owned businesses, and the communities hardest hit by the pandemic. The legislation increases access for businesses most in need through several set-asides. First, $15 billion has been set aside for community lenders such as community development financial institutions and minority depository institutions to offer access to small businesses. Community development financial institutions are banks, credit unions, loan funds, or venture funds that are committed to increasing financial access to underserved communities and have received CDFI accreditation by the U.S. Department of Treasury CDFI fund. Minority depository institutions are federally insured depository institutions that are owned or led by a majority of people of color. CDFIs and MDIs have a well-documented track record of serving small businesses and businesses of color that are often overlooked by mainstream financial institutions. For example, in the last round of PPP funding, CDFIs and MDIs nationally made over $16 billion in PPP loans with an average size of $74,000. As you can see here in the slide that we have shown, the SBA, the Small Business Administration, has dedicated large amounts of PPP funding to reach the smallest of small businesses. $35 billion has been allocated for first-time borrowers, $15 billion of which is designated for smaller first-time borrowers with 10 or fewer employees or to loans less than $250,000 in low-income areas. $25 billion has been allocated for second draw PPP loans to smaller borrowers with 10 or fewer employees or to loans less than $250,000 in low-income areas. There's also a $15 billion set aside for live venues, theaters, and cultural institutions such as museums. Additionally, for the first 2 days of the program, which were January 11th and January 12th, the SBA only accepted PPP loans submitted through community lenders such as CDFIs. Now, unlike the first rounds of the PPP program, small businesses of color, the overwhelming majority of which were proprietors and self-employed individuals who again had limited access to mainstream financial institutions, had time to access PPP funds before they dried up. Now, this was a critical step taken by the SBA to ensure that PPP funds were administered to those who applied first, given that they are on first served basis. This priority entry was a recognition by SBA of the role of CDFIs and MDIs in reaching smaller businesses and businesses of color. Now, although the window for priority lending has passed, that is the first 2 days being for community lenders, community lenders still have the $15 billion set aside to assist small businesses and businesses of color. Now, banks with less than $1 billion in assets will be able to process PPP loans starting tomorrow, and all lenders will have access to the PPP portal starting Monday. Now, in addition to the set-asides, there are other important changes that create more benefits for PPP borrowers. Businesses that receive an EIDL or Economic Injury Disaster Loan are now able to get all of their PPP loan forgiven. Prior to this legislation, the amount of the PPP loan to be forgiven would be reduced by the amount of EIDL a business received. Secondly, PPP recipients will not have to pay taxes on their PPP loan, which means that there is more money they can get when it comes to filing their taxes. Also, PPP recipients now have a greater time frame to spend PPP funds. Now it's 24 weeks. Previously, it was just 8. And these recipients can use funds to cover additional expenses that were previously not allowed, or rather not permitted. Those expenses include but are not limited to purchasing PPE or making changes to business model that would allow a safe or safer reopening, such as purchasing plastic or glass separators. With these changes to the Paycheck Protection Program, Congress and the SBA have made, the Small Business Administration, have made an effort to increase access for small businesses of color. Many small businesses have faced systemic challenges to access to the Paycheck Protection Program last year, yet community financial institutions, again, CDFIs and MDIs, provided relief. Hope, like many other CDFIs, stepped up to meet the challenges facing the businesses hardest hit by the CDFI, hardest hit by the pandemic. For the two states with the largest Black populations in the country, which are Mississippi and Louisiana, CDFIs made 7 times more PPP loans under $150,000 than the 5 largest banks in the country. I repeat, CDFIs made 7 times more PPP loans under $150,000 than the 5 largest banks in the country in Mississippi and Mississippi and Louisiana. And as of September 15th, Hope has funded over 2,500 PPP loans totaling $81 million, which equates to 10,000 jobs supported in the Deep South. The majority of our PPP loans have been to businesses owned or led by people of color or women, and the majority are located in communities of color. Now, we will continue to provide access for businesses hardest hit with the new round of PPP funding, and we do appreciate the time you all have given us to talk about the PPP legislation in this current form. So now I will hand it off to my colleague Kathy to talk more about the PPP program in detail.
Sure. So thank you so much, Kia, for that. And we are happy at Hope that we have a policy institute that allows us as a CDFI to advocate for you and for policies that affect us in the financial areas. So by Hope being a community development financial institution, you know, we do work in economically distressed communities. And we were so happy that as Kia gave you those data points, that we did over 2,900 loans. And so that was major. And many of the small businesses that we assisted were members of other financial institutions, and their financial institutions did not call them back. So Kia has given you a great overview, and now I am going to break that policy down to how that applies to you. So you may hear some of the same information, but I'm going to break that down. All right. So as we indicated, that this was a part of the CARES Act. It was funded by the U.S. Treasury, administered by Small Business Administration, and supported by SBA authorized lenders. So we are a community development financial institution. And in that second round, there were a lot of provisions for community development financial institutions to make sure that we were able to get small businesses through, and in many situations, businesses of color. So there were special time frames when those windows were open, where they were only processing for us. So in this situation, the portal opened this week for community development financial institutions. First draw started on Monday and second draw started on Wednesday. And that is going to continue until next week. Then it is going to be open to larger financial institutions. And I will define and make sure that we are clear on what is first draw and second draw. Because we know that many small businesses still continue to face hardships. And in some situations, due to whatever, you were not able to get through in the first round of PPP. So if you had not received a Paycheck Protection Program fund before August the 20th, then you are considered a first draw. If you are going through another financial institution, and it may be your first time doing business with them, but you have received funding, you are still considered a second draw. And as I go through the presentation, I'm also embedding common questions that we are getting. So in the first draw, you will use, and I apologize for the slide. So you can probably go to the next slide. Okay. So these funds too, for this, we're calling this round 3. This is going to be open through March the 31st. Okay. All right. So, so for the first, so if you are first draw and you have never received PPP funds, you may have received EIDL funds, but you have not received PPP funds, you can still apply. And we are basically using the same criteria that we did before. So depending on your business structure, you will have to submit financial documentation. At this point, it should be a tax return. And you can get, depending on what your payroll costs are, what your payroll is, you can get the average monthly, and that is multiplied times 2.5. Okay, we'll get a little deeper into that. Let me define second draw. If you have received PPP in the past, you can possibly qualify for additional funds. The second draw is available to small businesses that receive PPP in the first round, and you would have to demonstrate that you have experienced a 25% reduction in gross receipts. And we would be comparing quarter to quarter of 2019 to 2020. Okay, I want to make sure that everyone is comfortable with that. In this round, they have expanded what those funds can be used for. In the last round, it was payroll, it was rent, it was mortgage, interest, and utilities. That has been expanded. These funds can be used if you are granted funds for PPP. It can be used for payroll, rent, mortgage, interest, utilities, other debt service, operational expenses, property damage cost, supplier cost, and worker protection. At least 60% still has to be used for payroll. That was in the first round, that is in this round. But payroll costs this time could include salaries, wages, commissions, cash tips and payments. It could be vacation, expense, parental and family medical leave, and other employee benefits, including insurances. We can go to the next slide. Okay, as Kiat indicated, and this is a loan, so let me make that clear. It is a loan that can be forgiven, which means that there is a process that you would have to go through to have that forgiven. And some of you may be experiencing that if you received funds in the first round. So the loans can be forgiven. We mentioned what it can be used for. It starts off with an interest rate of 1%. That interest does not kick in until the forgivable period. There is no collateral, there's no personal guarantees. This is all guaranteed by the SBA. There's no fees. If you had a PPP in the past, as I indicated, if you're second round, and even if you did have an EIDL loan, you can still apply. If you received funds in the first round, and you have not applied for forgiveness, you need to do that, but that does not prohibit you from applying for the second draw. If you have not used all of your funds, but you received funds in the first round, you can still apply. However, you would have to use those funds before the second draw is funded. Let's go to the next slide.
Kathy, I have one question that came in. Can I ask now?
That would be fine with me.
So the statement is presently have a PPP loan with Hope and tried to file for forgiveness. I was told that Hope was not accepting applications because changes are being made. I need to know if it's open now and who do I talk to?
Okay, so let me come back to that question because I don't want to get into forgiveness. Let me go through this process, and I promise I will answer that question at the end. And it may help to just pose all the questions at the end.
Great.
Okay, there is a slight change from who can apply and who is eligible. And so they have expanded that as well. So eligible businesses that can apply or any small businesses, depending on whatever your structure is. If you're an independent contractor, you have to apply on your own. If you are an independent contractor, who you are contracted with cannot apply for you. If you are a tax-exempt nonprofit, and that would include a 501c3, employing no more than 300, a 501c19, also a 501c6 organization. Seasonal businesses can also apply if you work 7 or less months. Again, independent contractors do not account for employees. Another question that comes up often is businesses that are in bankruptcy, they can apply for the program, and loan proceeds would be designated as administrative expenses, even if you were a previous PPP borrower. The maximum loan amounts is up to $2 million. Okay, so let's talk about businesses that apply as a second draw. And as we indicated, you have to demonstrate a loss of at least 25% or more on your gross receipts or your revenues. And we're looking at any quarter compared 2019 to 2020. If you are a business that does not report quarterly, then we would look at it annually. So the portal is open. Applications can be taken to start this process. You would go into the portal. It's going to ask you a few questions to determine if you are a first-time draw or a second-time draw. Again, if you are a first-time draw and you have never received PPP before, then you would indicate that. There'll be some questions there. If it's a second time, even if you had not applied with HOPE before, but you received PPP funds, you will indicate that, and that will take you to the appropriate application. At this point, the SBA application is uploaded on the system. You would complete that. You can DocuSign that and submit that. There is a calculation sheet that you would complete. You would complete that on the system and submit that. But you should be getting your financial documents together. And so that is a big question. So what do I use? I am a business that does not complete financials on a quarterly basis. Of course, at this point, you probably, in some situations, you have not completed your taxes. So what can I submit? So SBA makes that pretty general about what you can submit. And there also is a certification that just indicates that you can just certify that you know that you have a 25% reduction in receipts or revenues. However, that has to be proven when it's time for forgiveness. And we will talk about forgiveness a little bit more. And so it's up to the lender as to what documentation that they accept. And so we want to get more documentation because of our experience of going through forgiveness for the first round. And so we're requesting that you would send in your full tax return for 2019. And we want to get what we can for 2020. SBA requests that you send in your bank statements, if you have any payroll journals. And that's great, but we know that all businesses don't have that. So it's probably going to boil down to that you would have to generate a profit and loss statement. Of course, if you have 940s and 941s, that would be great, but we know businesses do not have that. But just understand that you will have to confirm that it is a 25% reduction. And we want to help you on the front end because we want to set everyone up that they are prepared and these loans can be forgiven. The calculation sheet will help you to determine, to derive at what that monthly average is. And again, for a first round or a second draw, it's 2.5. There's only two industries where that multiplication can be 3.5, and that's for certain NAICS codes, which are in the restaurant and the entertainment business. And I'm sorry, the restaurant and the hotel business. That's restaurant and hotel business. So once you go through the process of submitting that application, if all your documentation is not there, someone will email you. So make sure that you are submitting the correct email addresses, because much of the communication is going to come through email. Someone will email you so that we can get that proper documentation to submit it to SBA, because we don't want anything to come back from SBA. Once it is submitted to Small Business Administration, there will be about a 2 to 3 day delay to get a response. In this round, the Small Business Administration is doing more of a due diligence process. They are checking to see if you received a first draw PPP from anyone. They are checking EID out, even though that will not stop you, and that is not going to be deducted from the amount that you would receive. But they are going through more of a due diligence process. And of course, that is due to fraud that was experienced. Not as much fraud on the PPP side, it was more on the EIDL side, but they're still going through all of those checks. So if you did receive funds in the first draw, it was probably almost an immediate response with an SBA number once your application was actually submitted to SBA. That is not going to happen this time. It's going to be more of a delay. Once that application comes back, you will get notification that your application is approved, and then we will start the closing process. That closing process will work pretty much like it did in the past. It will be an electronic process, and funds will be sent to your deposit account of choice. We are highly encouraging, because it expedites the process, to have an account with Hope. So I'm going to pause right now. I'm sure there are many questions that are coming through, and I can further clarify this information, and we'll talk a little bit about forgiveness. So are there any questions on the information that's been shared thus far?
Yes, let me see here. So the question is to clarify around the round one to have a 25% reduction since round one.
Yes, since round one. So if this is for a second draw, so that means that you received funds in round one and you are applying for additional funds, then you have to demonstrate that there was a 25% reduction in revenues, gross receipts, comparing 2019 to 2020. We can look at that on a quarterly basis, or we can look at it annual, just depending on how you report.
Okay, so this question is about the first draw PPP application from Community Institutions. Let's see who started on January the 11th. So I think this is just an announcement here that they started on January 11th.
Correct.
All right.
So those first 2 days were for first draw only. So only if you had not received PPP in the past, those applications were accepted and submitted to SBA. The portal opened for second draw on Wednesday, yesterday.
Right. Okay, where can applications be found, and is the application filled out and submitted to a participating lender?
Okay, so SBA has a site where you can submit application. SBA has on their site participating lenders. For Hope, you can go to Hope's website, which is www.hopecu.org/PPP, and that will connect you to our third-party vendor. That is our application process. But those applications do come to us, and we review them to ensure that all of the required documentation is present and all the information is there so that it can be seamless once it gets to SBA. SBA does the final approval and they would send that back to the lender. And then from there, a closing process would start.
Let me also quickly add that I've shared the link to our Payment Protection Program landing page in the chat box. So that the link that I shared has more information on the PPP program and our application process. And on that page, you will find the link that Kathy just referenced to go directly to the application. I just want to offer that clarity there.
Thank you, Kian.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so there's a question, if you didn't receive a first time, so this is your first time, do you have to demonstrate the 25% reduction?
That question has come up and you do not. You do not. They are using basically the same eligibility requirements as last year.
Okay. And I don't know if everybody's seen the chat, some of them, Kiat's answering. There was a question about whether or not you have to be a member to apply through HOPE.
You do not have to be a member to apply.
Yep.
Right.
Okay, let me see. So questions about what if you started a business this year? There are criteria about when you have to start your business.
Yeah, the businesses had to be started as of February of 2020.
Okay, how much impact will your tax return play in getting you approved?
Well, we are looking for, basically we are looking for employee cost, or if you are a business that submits a tax return that has a Schedule C, then we're looking for profit and loss. So your tax return should reflect your revenue. So basically we're looking at revenues and we're looking at payroll. And so your tax return is important because those items are going to be displayed on your tax return.
Okay.
However, again, when we're thinking about 2020 and doing that comparison, we are going to be looking at other financial documentation because in most cases, you will not have a 2020 tax return. But on first rounds, we're strictly looking at tax returns. We're comparing from last year. We want to see tax returns. For 20, we know that we're going to have to use other financial documentation.
So someone who was not filed before, they can use their 2019 tax return as a foundation.
That is correct.
And if they have filed before, you need some additional documentation to determine what's taken place between 2019 and 2020 to establish what that differential is.
Correct. And I am sure that our information, my information, will be distributed. Everybody's situation is different. And this is the toughest question that comes up. And sometimes it's so different, even if it's an LLC, I can still have 10 people, 20 people in a room. There's still going to be 20 different situations. So I'd be happy to talk through that with you of what documentation would be necessary if you have a specific situation. If it's just general and you have, your 940s and you have profit and loss, or, statements quarterly, you submit that. But sometimes it's very different situations. So we'll be happy to answer those questions on a one-on-one.
And I see a question here from Brittany Hawkins. It says, what if you don't have payroll yet? And Brittany, if you could just maybe clarify a little bit more what your question is referring to. Are you taking a draw, or is it, I have employees, but they haven't had a, yeah, she's saying draw only. She doesn't do payroll, she does a draw. And it's just per single.
Okay, and that's fine, that's fine. So you are considered your employee. So in that case, I'm going to assume that you probably file a 1040 and you have a Schedule C. And so in that case, we'd be looking at line 31 on that Schedule C, and we would use that profit and loss figure. However, if it is a loss, then you would be ineligible, but that is the line that would be considered. So for 2020, then we'd have to talk about, so what could you provide us with if you don't have, and you may, you may be able to complete your 2020 taxes, and that would make it simpler, because then we would be comparing and looking at your, I'm sorry, I think you said you were a second draw. If you were a second draw, then we would be comparing your 2019 to your 20. If you're first draw, then,
She's first draw. She's first draw.
Okay. It's first draw. So we can use her 2019.
19.
And that should include a Schedule C if she is the only employee.
Awesome. And someone's asking, can you just go over first time requirements again?
Sure. So first time you are, you're going to go on the portal and you're going to submit information. First time application is going to be a little bit different, but not too much different. And you're going to be supplying all the information about your business. Your NICS code is one of the things, if you don't have, you should make sure that you have that. And you're going to do a calculation sheet. That calculation sheet is going to ask you for monthly payroll or quarterly payroll, so that you can come up with what that monthly average is. And in most situations, that monthly average payroll amount is going to be multiplied times 2.5. Again, if you are the only employee, then we're gonna be looking at, what is that profit and loss of that business. So you are then going to submit the business application. You're going to submit that calculation sheet, and then you are going to submit tax return or whatever supporting documentation that you have. And, again, submit what you can so that we can verify that. Bank statements would be good. Your tax returns are good. If you have any financial statements, that can be submitted. So whatever you have, so that we can verify that information. Again, we're looking at payroll because it is a Paycheck Protection Program. However, the funds that you receive can be used for the expenses that I listed earlier, and I could go over those again. But it's basically, your basic costs to keep your business afloat, to keep your employees on payroll, and to keep your business going.
So yeah, we can just move on to the next presentation, but could you put the contact information for you and Kathy in the chat for us, please? Some people are asking for contact.
Yeah, the last slide of the presentation does have our contact information.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah,
It'll be on the last slide as well.
Yeah, we'll put it in too.
Yeah, I'm gonna put it in the chat room as well. Mm-hmm.
All right, next slide.
You go to the last one. It should be on the last one.
For the contact information.
There you go.
And the presentation is being recorded and will be on our chamber website, and also the contact information will be on our chamber website. We'll make sure you have ample opportunity to connect. Kathy, where do you want me to go back to?
Oh, so that's it for the slide. So what I wanted to just touch upon, because it is forgiveness. So if you, I'm going to give a situation of hope. If you applied for PPP and you received funding in the first round, then at this point you should be applying for forgiveness. For hope, we are going through CLA, Clifton Larson, I forget what the A stands for, but you're going to see CLA. And that is the system that we're going to use. And so you are going in and you are completing an application. That has to be completed in order to apply and to get forgiveness. And I think the percentage is extremely high of those that have applied for forgiveness and it has been granted. What is not extremely high is the number of applicants that have already gone into doing that. And I would have to supply the information of what documentation, I do apologize, of what's required for forgiveness. It's not a lot of documentation that has to be submitted there, but you have to go in and apply for forgiveness. Again, you have until, I want to say it's the end of January to apply for forgiveness. So if you have not started that process, you need to do that process. Anyone that did apply through HOPE, there were several emails that went out, and when the final email went out, it came from CLA. So many of the borrowers that I've been speaking to received the email, but didn't open it because, you know, they didn't know it applied to them and they didn't know it was from HOPE. HOPE is included in the body of the email, but it's not in the subject line. So many people have missed that. But depending on whomever your lender is, you should contact them if it's not HOPE to go through that process, because you know you want to get that that loan forgiven.
Kathy, if I may, I'd like to add some additional information to what you're mentioning. So the name of the third party that we partner with is Clifton Larson Allen. That's
Allen, yeah.
what you were looking for. And just to provide some context on loan forgiveness, the SBA reports that 1.1 million loans have been forgiven so far, totaling to about $100 billion in loan forgiveness. And the entire population of individuals or businesses that have requested loan forgiveness, it's only 1.3 million. And when I say only, I mean 1.3 million loans have requested forgiveness, and that's a total request of $170.5 billion. That's entire population of PPP recipients that are now asking for loan forgiveness. And of that 1.3 million loan forgiveness applications, 1.1 have been forgiven. So the majority of loans that have requested loan forgiveness have received loan forgiveness. So if you are in the process of applying for loan forgiveness, know that you stand a great chance based on the data that you should receive loan forgiveness. So please do not hesitate in getting that information submitted.
Okay, we have another question. The question is, if you have a home-based business, is any part of the rent or mortgage forgivable under PPP?
And this is for, yes. So those fundings can be used for rent and for mortgage interest, including utilities.
Okay, there's another question. If I receive EIDL loan and now want to apply for PPP, I've been considered first time?
I didn't hear the end of the question.
So it looks like they've applied for EIDL, never applied for PPP, and asking, are they considered first time for PPP or second time?
Yes, you would be considered first time for PPP. In the application, it is going to ask you about EIDL, and from what I can understand, it's going to increase the amount when you put that in, but just know that EIDL will not be deducted from those funds. It will not be considered. Those are all supposed to be forgiven as well. So it's going to ask it in the application. I just don't want it to throw you off. but that is not, EIDL is EIDL and PPP is just that. So it is separate and you can still apply and you would be considered a first draw.
Yes, am I correct? But EIDL does not have a forgiveness component.
Yes, it is. From what we're understanding from SBA, they are looking at forgiving them, and it is not going to interfere with PPP.
Okay. I'm scrolling through the questions here. I think we've answered most of these. And if there are any more questions, please enter, either use the chat function or Q&A. You're scrolling through both.
Kathy, I would like to double back. I'm sorry, Perry. To double back, there was a question earlier in the presentation about someone who applied for a PPP loan through HOPE.
Yes,
they
sir.
had about loan forgiveness. The question was, who should they contact or who should they reach out to? Or how best should they follow up on the loan forgiveness process with HOPE?
So they've already applied for forgiveness and they need to follow up?
Let me see if I can find the question.
Let me see if I can go back to the question. Thank you, Kiat, for that. So I'll read the question here. I presently have a PPP loan with HOPE and tried to file for forgiveness. I was told that HOPE was not accepting applications because changes are being made. I need to know if it's open now and who do I talk to?
So it is open now. You can go to our website and you can there is a link out there. However, why don't they just directly contact me and I will give them the information and forward the email that will have the link. And
Okay.
if there's any questions, there's also an email box that I can provide, so we can get them started. So
Is it the email on the screen?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so Ms. Robinson, if you're still on, just please contact Ms. Saloy and she will direct you with the solution there.
Yeah, we'll get you the information and make sure that you have the email address so we can get your questions answered, and we can get you started with that process.
Okay, and the question here, can someone apply for PPP loan if they're receiving unemployment?
So we are going to, we're going to look at their financial documentation. We're going to look at what those tax returns are going to indicate or what's on their financials, because I am assuming they're receiving unemployment, but yet they are running a business. So that is a specific situation that we would have to look at. It's going to be depending on what is submitted in those tax documents. I don't believe that unemployment would, but what is that situation?
Okay, I think we've covered all the questions that I can see here. And can you apply for more than one business?
Yes, you can.
Okay.
These are great questions.
Yeah.
So
really
I appreciate the questions, and I am sure you all will have more questions going forward and when you start the process. But hopefully this will help. And at this time, if it's second draw or if it's first draw, we would just encourage you to start getting your documentation together, get them all organized. Again, you have until March 31st, but we don't want to wait till that time. So if you can start organizing your documents so that when you do submit your information, everything is submitted, and we can review that and get that over to SBA as quickly as possible to get you funded.
Okay, so we did get a couple of questions more come in. Someone wants just to clarify that Hope is accepting applications for non-members.
Yes, we are accepting applications for non-members, and we always do, but we would hope that once you're approved, that you would open an account with Hope, and it would expedite the funding process. But at no time do we not assist a small business because they do not have membership at that time. So to answer the question, you can apply if you're not a member.
Let me
Okay.
also reiterate, Perry, I do apologize again,
Okay.
but let me also reiterate that community lenders like Hope, we are a community development financial institution. We have been afforded a $15 billion set aside in this legislation. And so what that means is if you are to apply through a CDFI like Hope, you stand a better chance of having access to the funds, because PPP money is based on a first come, first served basis. So by the time your application gets sent through the lender to SBA and back, you want to make sure that there's money still available for you to have access to. And so with us having a set aside, that's at least $15 billion that's not subject to other competition. So I just wanted to add that in when you're considering who to consider to process your PPP loan, which lender, you definitely want to consider CDFIs.
Great.
Good point, Kiara. Thank you.
Okay, and then there's a question here. We received a PPP loan and an EIDL loan. Are both of them forgivable, and can we apply for a new program?
So because you applied for PPP, you can apply again. EIDL does not stop you. And from what we can understand, the EIDL can be forgiven. Okay, but that is another process and another program. So I would just suggest, resorting to SBA to get more information on that. But that is our understanding. But again, I would just suggest that, that you would get more information from SBA in reference to your EIDL. You will be asked about that on the PPP application. It will not stop you from getting an additional draw though.
Okay, there's a question that says, should I start the application while getting docs together or wait until I have docs in order?
Our suggestion would be to wait until you have all of your information and then you're making one submission.
Okay, and there's a question about your territory. Do you service Florida?
Normally, we do not, but for the PPPs, we have expanded our regions for PPP lending, and we do service Florida.
Okay, so there's a question here. I started an application and incurred an issue entering the average month payroll, entering pay amount, loan amount, and entering employees. Some sort of, sounds like maybe technical or application issue. And the question, Ms. Fraser, is this on Hope application or just an application in general? And the webinar is being recorded. And there's a question about our next webinar. Our next webinar is not for the Regional Black Chamber, is not dedicated specifically to PPP. It is coming up on January the 21st, I believe.
So that is why we are partnering with several technical assistance providers in all of our target markets. And if you have questions, we're happy to answer those questions at Hope. It's just that we want to make sure that we get back to you quickly. So I believe that someone may be designated with the Black Chamber that may be able to help with some of these specific questions and going through that application process if anyone is requiring assistance. So, you may be able to follow back up and get some assistance with where to obtain the information that you're putting into that spreadsheet or information that may be needed to complete that application.
Okay, so just to clarify that the application error that was incurred was in fact with Hope. And
was it a technical issue, or I mean, if it's specifically with Hope and it's something that we can assist with or we should be aware of, then definitely reach out to me and we'll be happy to take a look at that.
Great. All right, these are really great questions. I think we've answered all of them as of this moment. And I would say, Dr. Richard, I see you're here. Do you want to do some closing? Laverne, are you on?
Well, Perry, yes, I would like to just thank Mr. Lloyd and Mr. Burke for the information, because for everyone who's participating, do not apply, because if you don't, you can't possibly get the money. It does require you to put your information together. As Mr. Lloyd said, it's very important. You should gather your documents before you start the application process. As the last round, there were several people who I talked to as part of the chamber that couldn't get those documents together. The one question I did have, Mr. Lloyd, in terms of the window on the payroll, I know companies have to be in place by in operations as of February, but what is now the payroll window in which you have to provide the documentation for, the payroll information for? So
I don't know if I'm understanding your question. This is a second draw, this is a first draw, what?
The second draw, what is the window? Because the first draw was on February to March something. For the first, it actually was basically like the first quarter of the year in terms of the payroll documentation. What is the window this time?
Okay, so remember, for second draw, we are comparing the 2019 to 20.
Okay, so the 25% is really going to be the measure.
Yes.
All right.
So
Great.
we're going to be looking, if we're going to be looking at quarter, we're going to be looking at matching quarter to quarter. If it was annual, then we'll be looking at, 2019, 2020.
Okay. Again, just encourage everybody on the webinar to apply. You cannot get it if you don't apply. Put your information together, and Laverne will talk about what will be our availability to provide any technical assistance. But I just encourage everyone to apply, because you can't get it if you don't submit the application.
Yeah, I really would like to just echo that. So this is an opportunity for you to sustain your business. And there is a lot of technical assistance out there to help you with that process. So the information, don't get overwhelmed with the documentation that needs to be submitted. We want to get you approved, and we want to set you up for forgiveness so that this is forgiven in the long run. So take the time, organize the documents, get the assistance that you need, and submit it.
Yeah, I have a question in regards, I know that we've been talking in regards to small businesses, but it also applied to nonprofit organizations. So there may be some that may be in attendance. Do you just want to elaborate a little bit on that, if you don't mind?
So again, it is open to nonprofits, and nonprofits again are, as far as financial documentation is concerned, is going to be different depending on what your structure is, and possibly you don't have to file a tax return. So we are going to need some financial documentation. So again, that's going to depend on what financial documentation that you have that would have to be submitted. But we are going to need some supporting documentation. So that could be, again, profit and loss statements, your bank statements. It's probably going to be different just depending on what your structure is.
Right.
Well, thank you for that. And in regards to the comment that Dr. Richard stated, with NORBCC providing technical assistance, what I would encourage is that anyone have any further questions in regards to the application process, please feel free to give us a call. I will put our contact information in the chat, and please feel free to call our office or email us, and we will do all that we can to provide answers and connect you to a resource that can assist you in your application.
And my final thoughts to everyone is a combination of Dr. Richard and Kiat combination is this is a set aside that organizations such as HOPE have a window of time to get you in front of a line and provide assistance to guide you through that process. So this is definitely an opportunity for our small businesses to take advantage of this opportunity. So,
Terry, I see Madam Chair has joined the call, the webinar.
yes.
There she
Hi,
is.
everyone. Good evening. This was excellent information. Thank you so much, Ms. Saloy and Mr. Burt. I hope everyone found it rewarding. Again, please apply. Please use the New Orleans Regional Black Chamber team as a resource. We're here for you. And again, thank you, Hope, for this information.
Awesome. Great. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Thank you very much, Hope.
Thank you, Hope.
Good night. And thank you everyone for attending tonight's webinar.